we were in the majority, and I'm using my air quotes now, in the majority. Did we have a majority? Did we not? That could be debated. The people that
you definitely had a majority. You had all of the gavels.
When certain key people hold certain positions and they can sway the votes, then you really don't have a majority. If you have a majority of like-minded people, then you have a majority. Mm-hmm. But if you have 19 like-minded individuals and 4 that could swing either way, then you really don't have a majority. So yes, we had the chairs of the committees and we had the bigger office. It was a good experience. I actually had more fun in caucus with the freshman caucus.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is Representative Frank Tomaszewski of Fairbanks. He got his start in local politics opposing a plan by North Star Borough Mayor Luke Hopkins to build a parking lot near Frank's home. Frank ran for the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly in 2019 and served until 2022. He then ran against Luke Hopkins' son, Grier Hopkins, who was serving in the Alaska State House, and Frank defeated him. Frank and I were freshmen together in 2022, and now, as we start our second terms together, we sit next to each other on the House floor. Frank Tomaszewski, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andrew. Appreciate it.
So I did a little research this morning. It looks like you've been in Fairbanks for 45 years.
Yes.
So I'm guessing you moved there when you were 5, 6?
7 years old.
7 years old.
My parents told me to get in the car one day, and I went from dodging traffic in Illinois to dodging mosquitoes in Fairbanks, Alaska.
Where were you in Illinois?
Chicago.
Oh, were you born there?
Yes.
So why'd your parents move to Alaska when you were 7?
The Trans-Alaska Pipeline. My dad is a carpenter, and he had been traveling back and forth to Alaska working on the pipeline and decided he liked it up here. And so he packed us all up and we convoyed up the Alcan with a fifth wheel trailer and a station wagon with a little box he built on a trailer behind us with all of our worldly possessions.
How many kids?
4. So I have 3 siblings, 1 brother and 2 sisters.
What number are you?
I'm the baby.
Oh.
I'm the baby of the family.
You guys came up like late 70s?
Yep, 1979. I came to Alaska.
And do you remember your first impressions?
Oh, I loved it because we ended up camping at a campground north of Fairbanks out in Chattanooga, and it was Whitefish Campgrounds, and it was fantastic. There were so many grayling in the river, and there were lakes around, and there was a few other kids. It was such a great summer, except I brought my cat with us up to Alaska, and my cat disappeared from that campground.
Oh, really? Like
we think someone took it because there was other campers, and he used to just wander the campground, but always came back. Who knows? It could have been an animal. Could have been someone else just decided, oh, here's a nice cat.
That's something at 7 that you would not forget.
Yeah,
losing your cat. Did your parents grow up in Chicago?
Nope, from Wisconsin. They grew up in the middle of Wisconsin, farming families, both a family of 7.
So they weren't wedded to the urban lifestyle of Chicago. They were prepared to do something a little more off the beaten track.
No, I think growing up on a farm, they probably felt, you're always looking at what's on the other side of the fence, right? The grass is always greener on the other side. So maybe growing up on a farm, they look at the big city, think, wow, this is amazing. And so at some point they moved there. I think that's where my dad joined the union, carpentry, and spent time working, and then finally found a pathway to go to Alaska. And so we sold our house in Chicago and moved to Alaska.
Did they stay?
They stayed here in Alaska. So I lost my mom 4 years ago, just during the COVID pandemic. She had complication with heart surgery. And my dad still lives in Fairbanks, in my district, in Fox, Alaska.
Did you go to public school in Fairbanks?
I did. I went to Fox Elementary School, which doesn't exist now. The gymnasium still does exist there, and it's the fire station. I think they're using it to house fire trucks. And the playground, the fenced-in playground, is now the dump.
And which high school did you graduate from?
I graduated from Lathrop High School.
Yeah. Did you have a good experience in school?
I never really enjoyed school too much, but I liked a lot of extracurricular activities and those sorts of things.
What were their extracurriculars?
Oh, just having friends. I was on the wrestling team. So I did some sports.
What did you do after high school?
After high school, I spent a year out of school and just working odd jobs, that sort of thing. And then I enrolled at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And then during the summers, I was firefighting. So I did wildland firefighting for my first state job, right? So when I came down here, I gave them my name here. They were like, "Oh, you have an employee number." I'm like, "Really? I've never worked for this." "Oh, yeah, I did." But it was an exempted position.
Gotcha. So you're not on a special tier.
No, I'm hired in 2022.
All of us.
Yeah, so tier 4. But yeah, I was going to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I was headed towards business, and I was fighting fires in the summertime.
And did you graduate from University of Alaska Fairbanks?
No, I think it was my third summer I was fighting fires. My last fire, I was in Washington. And they sometimes send crews to other states. And so I came back to Fairbanks that summer after my last fire, and I got a job as an electrician. A friend of mine was like, "Hey, we're like hiring out at Eielson." So I went 21 days straight of firefighting, and then I worked another 21 days straight because they were like really behind. And I just got in there and started they called me Shovel Boy because you're the low guy on the totem pole. But I started my working as an electrician, and I just never went back to school.
Yeah, I've heard the story before. It's if you get the job you want, why would you go back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great job. I was learning a trade, and the money was really good. And I just felt like I enjoyed it, and I just wanted to continue. Yeah, I just kept going with it.
What were you studying? What would your degree have been in if you'd kept going?
Business. I was headed towards a business degree, and I was always business oriented. I remember when I was a kid in elementary school, I would go to the grocery store in Fox, and I would buy a bunch of packs of gum, and then I put them in this jar. So I had all this Bubblicious gum. They would come in like a 5 or 6 pack, and I put them all in this jar, and it smelled delicious because there's orange, and raspberry, and all these different flavors of gum. And I'd take them all apart. I put them in this jar, and I bring them to school with me. And I was selling pieces of gum to the kids for 10 cents a piece or something. I started making some money doing that. Nothing substantial. But I got to the point where my teacher was like, "You can't do that. You need a business license." And I'm like, I'm in 3rd grade. "What do you mean I need a business?" I had no idea what a business license was. I'm just supplying a need to the kids, or at least maybe a want.
And now you sell birch syrup.
Yes.
Get us from electrician to businessman again.
Sure. So in my experience as an electrician, I worked through my apprenticeship. I became a journeyman electrician. I worked
So you union?
No, I was actually non-union.
Okay.
Non-union electrician. And I worked through the apprenticeship. I got my journeyman's license through the state of Alaska. You need another additional 4 years to get your administrator's license. And some states call it a master's electrician. Mm-hmm. The state of Alaska calls it an electrical administrator's license. And so I went and studied for that, took the test, and acquired my electrical administrator's license. So I have an unlimited commercial wireman's license, which basically means I have a license. I can do the electrical work on any building in the state of Alaska, except a nuclear reactor. There's a couple exceptions. Not going for the nuclear reactor. But so I got that license. And then about a year later, I just started my own little electrical contracting business. And I did a variety. I wired some houses. Growing up with my dad being a carpenter, I had worked with him quite a bit on building houses, building decks, that sort of thing. It was a variety of work that I did. And when I got my business license, I just got a general contractor's license. And I got my residential endorsement, so I was able to build homes. So I could build the home, wire the home. And so I built several homes, wired dental offices, worked on base, different jobs, just contracted out.
Eielson?
I worked on Eielson, some projects out there. That's where I got that was my first electrical job, was out at Eielson. When I said, my buddy called and said, "Hey, we got to work." Oh. I spent 6 years out on Eielson. That's really where I cut most of my teeth as an electrician. And we started out doing a residential subdivisions, actually where a lot of the airmen live today. So it's French Creek and Moose Lake, a subdivision. There's 366 family units. It was about a 2-year project. But after that project, we went to the power plant out there. We tore all the electrical out of that power plant and put all new back in, other barracks, other things.
So I'm still interested in how you started the birch syrup.
Yes. So I was working as an electrician, had my own company, and leave it to YouTube to complicate your life, right? Scrolling through YouTube videos, I found this guy in Russia, and he was tapping birch trees and he was making birch syrup. And I didn't even know that you could make birch syrup out of birch trees. And I look out my window, I go, I live on Birch Hill. I have birch trees everywhere. I could do that, right? You have these ideas. And so literally, I got on the website. I researched the spiles that you tap into you drill a hole in the tree, you tap the tree, and then you get the sap out. So I researched them. I found some. I ordered a bag, 100 of them, and they came in the mail. I don't know, a week later, whatever. They came in the mail, and I was excited. So I went out and I drilled a birch tree and put my spile in, and it was producing sap.
Like it happened, like you saw it happen in real time.
Yeah, it
came in the mail, you put it in.
I saw the video.
Yep.
I ordered the taps. I drilled the tree, and they were producing. The incredible thing about that is birch trees only produce about 2 to 3 weeks per year.
Oh, so you just got it right at the
I hit
time.
it right at the right time. And so that first day I tapped 10 trees, and I hung my buckets on them, and I was collecting sap, and I just built a little fire pit with some cinder blocks and some stainless steel pans, and I stoked the fire, and I evaporated the sap in three little pans over this campfire, basically. And I made some really terrible syrup.
Why was it terrible?
Oh, because the heat, uncontrolled heat back and forth, the scorching, the smoke, the ash, everything unfiltered. It was, and you boil it down, and the sap itself, it takes about 110 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. So boiling sap over a campfire to make a gallon of syrup, you have to
boil off like
255-gallon drums.
9% of it. That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was my beginning of my syrup. So I tapped 10 trees the first day, and then I thought, wow, this is amazing. So I tapped 50. And so I had 50 trees going, and I couldn't keep up with the sap. I was on Facebook, hey, bring your containers, come get sap, whatever. And some friends came over and they got some sap. And so that...
Would people just take the sap and then just boil it? Oh, drink it.
Yeah, you can drink the sap. It's really a great drink. In fact, that was one of my products I produced for a lot of years. I'm not doing it now, but it's Birch 2.0, which is what I called it. And I sold it at the Natural Pantry and stores around the state.
And does tapping the tree hurt the tree?
No, it's just you tap it and then it heals. It heals itself. You take the tap out and then it heals just like a little wound. And it's just a small percentage. Just think of when the wind blows and a stick, one of the branches breaks, you'll see that dripping. So it's a natural process. You don't want to over tap it. There's certain thoughts on the proper way to tap. Just one tap. And
do you tap in the same place every year?
No, you usually go up over 2 inches, up 2 inches. Or down 2 inches. And so you spread it out, and you could see the progress from over the years of the trees. And they're healed up little wounds, just like when you cut your finger.
Cool. Where all are you selling the syrup now? And how many trees are tapped right now?
None are tapped right now. I have my two. I started out with buckets. At one point, I had 500 5-gallon buckets that I had to go collect. But now what we do is we have the tubing. So we have little tubes, go to bigger tubes, then go to big tubes, and then drain into big tanks.
Like you have like your own little pipeline.
Yeah, it's like a spider web going up the hills. And so I use all gravity feed. I don't have any pumps that pump it out. It's all gravity fed into tanks. But after that first year of boiling over a campfire, I was talking to my wife and we were thinking, do we want to do this? Do we want to start a little birch syrup business? We spent a little bit of capital on more equipment. evaporators, filters, filter presses, different equipment that you would need. And it's the same as the maple industry uses. So you're just basically buying maple syrup industry stuff, even though birch syrup is a different product. But we started doing that. And our first time we sold was at the Town and Valley State Fair. So I built a little booth. We had different products. We were selling birch jam, birch syrup, birch vinegars.
You know, on the East Coast, they sell birch beer, like root beer, but like birch beer.
Yeah. I have had people say, you should do that. And I was like, another product. And 49th State Brewery actually bought 30 gallons of syrup from me one year, and they made a stout beer out of it. And so right now, I've dialed back my number of products. I used to make a lot more. Being elected into office and doing other things, we just didn't have the capability to hold so many products and make so much. So we're dialed back to 10 products, and you can purchase them at any Walmart or Fred Meyer's in the state.
What's the name of the company?
Sample Alaska.
Sample, like Sample?
Yep, Sample Alaska.
How'd you come up with the name?
Yeah, everything else was taken.
So you mentioned your wife working with you on the business and coming up with the idea. How'd you all meet?
Harmony and I. So she was actually a roommate with a girl that I went to high school with. So we just met after high school. I think I was just out of high school, and she was working in town, and she was introduced and just went from there.
And how long have you been married?
We just celebrated our 30-year anniversary about almost 2 weeks ago.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thanks.
And how many kids do you guys have?
So we have five kids, ages 26 to 15. I have 4 boys and 1 daughter. And now I have 2 granddaughters. My oldest son has 2 daughters, and they're amazing. One is almost 5, and then the other is 1. Being a grandparent is really a lot of fun. And he actually has something in common with you. I know you're a physician's assistant. He's currently in Tennessee. They left Alaska to go to Tennessee so he could get his physician's assistant's license.
It's a great career. Your son made a good choice. Did you guys homeschool your kids the whole way through?
Almost. So we started out at Fairhill Christian School. So my first 3 boys all went there. So my oldest would have gone till he was in 4th grade. So we live like almost 23 miles away from the school.
So it was a long commute.
It was a long commute. And of course you had to drive there. And we were spending more on fuel getting the kids back and forth to school than we paid on tuition. My wife drove this big diesel truck, and we just decided the next year we couldn't afford it. We couldn't afford to drive them there and pay the tuition and everything else. So we just started homeschooling.
So you'd gone to public school, but opted not to put your kids in public school. Can you talk about the decision?
I don't even remember being way out on Murphy Dome. I think that the commute would have been long to whichever school it was that we would have been near. We just wanted to raise them up in the church, and we thought a Christian school would be the way to do that. And yeah, that's the
What church do y'all belong to?
So in Fairbanks, we're at Journey Christian Church. It's a non-denominational Christian church over near the airport in Fairbanks.
Did you grow up religious?
No. In fact, my family was Catholic coming out of Chicago, right? So we went to church a little. I don't even remember, honestly, going to church as a kid. And when we came to Alaska, I don't ever remember going to church with the family. So no, I never went to church growing up in Fairbanks in Alaska.
Did Harmony get you involved in church? Or were you already involved in church before you met her?
No, she would probably be the one that drug me to church, maybe kicking and screaming a little. Wait, isn't there football today, right? So Harmony was a good inspiration for me to go to church and start my journey, my walk with God.
Were your parents political?
No, not at all. They kept to themselves, basically. My dad worked, and when he wasn't working for someone else, he was working on the house. We built the house that we lived in, and I can remember summers where my dad would work all day and come back and we'd do a little work at night. And then on the weekends, we would go cut firewood. And so we had this mountain of firewood. We could probably heat our house for 2 years or more. It was massive wood pile, but he loved having his wood pile. Yeah, they kept to themselves and they weren't involved in too many things. And yeah.
Was your dad surprised when you got involved in politics?
I don't know if he was surprised. Maybe. They never even really come to a political rally or a debate or anything, but they just, I don't know if they were surprised. They're very proud of me for doing that and serving the community.
Had you been involved in politics before you ran for the assembly? Because your first position was Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly.
Correct. I'm going to say, no, I was never really involved in anything political. I was just living my life and doing my electrical business and doing my syrup business. And when I started my syrup, it took on a life of its own. And so I was struggling with doing both the electrical and the birch syrup. And so I quit doing electrical work for that purpose and just focused on the birch syrup. So when I first ran for office, I was only doing my birch business.
What year was that when you ran the first time?
2019. Mm-hmm. So that's when I was first elected to the assembly for I served one term. And I know the next question is, why did I sign up? And it was one morning, early in the morning, my neighbor came and knocked on the door and she said, "Hey, what do you think about this parking lot that they're building right next to your house?" And I said, "What parking lot? They're building right next to my house." And she said, "Yeah, they've been through the neighborhood and they did this and that, and they're going to build a parking lot because my backyard is actually Fort Wainwright. But it's a part of Fort Wainwright where they have all the ski trails. We have the Birch Hill Recreation Area, and then we have Fort Wainwright connected to it. And the ski trails go through all of it. So my backyard was the ski trails, and there was 3 residential lots on one side of my property. And the plan was to buy those lots, our residential lots from our little subdivision, and build a big parking lot.
For skiing?
For, activities.
It was like the borough was going to buy it.
Yeah, so the borough. So we went and talked to the mayor. So I went with that neighbor, and her and I went to the mayor and said, "Hey, what's going on? How come I haven't heard about it? Why didn't you knock on my door?" They probably sent out those little postcards
that no one visited still.
Yeah, they probably sent one of those out and did their due diligence, I'm sure, but I hadn't seen it or registered what it was going on. And the mayor, who was Luke Hopkins at the time, said, "Oh yeah, that's our plan. We plan on doing this." And we talked to him and he said, "If half of the neighborhood doesn't want a parking lot there, then we won't build one." And so we got the neighbors together and we had way more than half of them say, "No, we don't want a parking lot." And the borough bought the property anyway. And to their credit, they didn't build the parking lot. It was turned into one in the meantime, but it's not paved. It's dirt. And they built a mechanic shop on the corner. So it's not that bad. But the fact that they bought residential lots with covenants that say you can't do commercial stuff on these lots.
Well, I was going to ask, what were people doing to access the trails before? And were there other parking lots? Was there other places that you could access the trails?
There are a lot of parking lots within the ski area, yes. But there were probably 2 or 3 events that there was overflow parking. In the neighborhood,
a couple of times a year, there wasn't enough. A couple times
a year, they would do cross-country running in the summertime. And when they had big meets, then the parking lots would fill up. It would spill over into the neighborhood roads, but only maybe 2 or 3 times a year. And so it wasn't really a problem. But the fact that the mayor said they would do one thing and then he did it. And so it got me watching more because I'd always paid attention to national stuff going on, but I never really paid attention to local. And then I just happened to be in the newspaper and said, "Hey, it's time to sign up for borough assembly." And so I went down. I filed the last day and the last hour to run for assembly.
Were you the face of "don't buy this land"?
No,
not really.
Never even talked about it.
Really?
Unless people ask me that question, why? I just wanted to see what was
So you're
going on.
inspired.
I wanted to be a voice for the people because I felt like my voice wasn't listened
Hey,
to.
and I apologize that I don't know this. Is Luke Hopkins related to Grier Hopkins?
Luke Hopkins is Grier Hopkins' father.
Okay, so Luke Hopkins was the borough mayor, and now Grier Hopkins is.
He is the borough mayor also now.
Okay, so Luke Hopkins' son is now the borough mayor.
Yeah, like I told Grier Hopkins, I said, your dad was the one that got me involved in politics.
And you ran for Grier's seat?
I did.
I'm jumping ahead.
Sure.
So you did this one stint on the assembly, and I
it's
assume that was like a learning experience.
Sure, because it's the legislative body of the borough, the assembly. That's their role. And so it's a 3-year term. I served from 2019 to 2022. And in the October of 22 is the end of my term. November 22 is when I was elected to the state house. So I just went from one.
Because redistricting had happened during that period.
Redistricting had happened, and Grier found himself in my district.
He hadn't been before. So he wasn't your representative before.
No, I think actually he was, because I was on the very edge. So
you're the western edge of
East,
your. Okay, you're the eastern edge of your district?
I was.
Got it. I see. When you were in Grier's.
When it was District 4, I was
it.
on the eastern edge. And when redistricting happened.
Now you're on the western part.
Yeah.
So basically what was a more Democratic friendly district got redrawn to a more Republican friendly district. So it was an opportunity.
Yes, it was a good opportunity. A friend of mine ran against him 2 years ago in the former District 4 and did a very good job at nearly beating him 2 years prior. And so the first thing, when I saw the redistricting in the maps, the first thing I did was called my friend who had run before. And so I said, hey, are you going to run again? And he said, no, you should run. And that was my decision right there.
When I first got elected at the same time as you in 2022, I was trying to do research on my new colleagues.
Okay.
And so the only thing I remember is, I think, wasn't your slogan, Fire Grier?
Yes, I used that. I had it on maybe some pamphlets that I handed out, but it was perfect. It rhymed. He'd been there a few years, and it was a good campaign.
I had never run for office before in 2022. So my feeling was that it was a terrible experience, and that if I lost, there was no way I was ever going to do that again.
Actually, I enjoyed it, actually. When I ran for assembly, I bought the signs and I called people, and I already know a lot of folks in Fairbanks. My name was out there, and I wasn't part of so many different things that people know me. I did a lot of door knocking. I did a lot of signs, and they actually called me like the sign king or something, because my signs were everywhere. And because it was borough wide, right? It's actually.
So it's like an at-large position?
Yeah, it's at large. There's 9 assembly members, and they're all at large. So it doesn't matter where you live.
So running for a house is actually easier. It's much more compact.
Yes, absolutely. I went from trying to get the votes of 95 to 100,000 people to 18,300. And so it's a smaller district, smaller area, but it's more spread out. There's no high density. Everybody's got 2 acres or more, or 10 miles apart. I can drive from one side of my district and 100 miles to the other. It's a long drive.
And my guess is there's a lot of people who do not expect or welcome people walking up to their house.
Absolutely. There are those individuals that really appreciate their privacy. And whenever I see private property, no soliciting, I turn around. It's difficult to do door knocking in some of those districts, areas like that.
Bouncing back to assembly, you were on the assembly during COVID.
Yes.
So I assume it was a dramatic and, I guess, eventful time to be on the assembly?
Yeah, it was interesting because you get elected on October and sworn in the end of October, beginning of November, and that was 19. And it was 2020 when everything started eating.
March.
January.
Yeah.
Trump shut down the flights from China. It was starting to get really serious, and we were going through this cleaning supplies and tried to figure out whether we were wearing masks. And it was, definitely an interesting time. And
Do you have any particular memory or story from that period?
We had a presiding officer, and she wanted us all to wear masks. And some of us wanted to, some of us didn't. And so she made the rule. We had to wear masks in the assembly chamber. So I followed the rules, and I wore the mask in the assembly chamber. And the funny thing was, every once in a while, a few of us would go out to, there's a little restaurant real close to the assembly, and we'd go in there and nobody's wearing masks. And even the people that are up on the dais, and even the one who made us wear masks doesn't wear a mask when she's out in the restaurant. And I'm going, okay. So it's like,
what's the point?
What is the point? Is it just
performance?
Yeah, it's just to be a performance, just to, and that's one of the things I don't like about politics is the fake performances. I try to be honest with everyone on how I feel or what I think about certain issues. And if you ask me, I'll be very blunt. And some issues I don't have an opinion yet, right? Because you don't have all the information, but I don't try to pretend I'm one thing in public and be someone else in private. So
you got elected in 2022 and been serving in the legislature.
Yeah.
What's that experience been like?
It's been really good.
Because you're on finance, and that's a big deal for a freshman legislator.
Yeah.
And now sophomore legislator.
I know, right? I don't feel like a sophomore. There's still so much to learn. I'm still learning new things all the time. And I see some of the other freshmen that have come in like struggling, and I'm like, hey, do you know about this? And they're like, no, I didn't know. You can find this bills and pass things.
Oh, I'm still not an expert at finding things, and
it's not easy. It's literally, they say it's like drinking from a fire hose. Yeah. It really is. And my first session as a freshman was very positive. We were in the majority, and I'm using my air quotes now, in the majority. Did we have a majority? Did we not? That could be debated. The people that
you definitely had a majority. You had all of the gavels, and I mean, because I'm learning that now, because I was going to say we barely have a majority as well. And what's the difference? It's the chairs are different. Like, that is the difference.
Yeah, but when certain key people hold certain positions and they can sway the votes, then you really don't have a majority. If you have a majority of like-minded people, then you have a majority. Mm-hmm. But if you have 19 like-minded individuals and 4 that could swing either way, then you really don't have a majority. So yes, we had the chairs of the committees, and we had the bigger office because you get to choose. And so it was a good experience. I actually had more fun at caucus with the freshman caucus. We had,
fun time. Yeah. We actually had substantive meetings that were more, I think, more impactful than what was happening in other caucus meetings in the building.
I think we built a lot of good relationships. And even though we may be on different sides of the spectrum, we came together in camaraderie and mutual respect. And I got some great friends out of the freshman caucus. That was important. I think you can't just isolate yourself and be in a box on one side of the fence. You need to make relationships with others, camaraderie, and work together, because there's a lot of things we can agree on. We're not going to agree on everything, but there are a lot of issues for the state of Alaska that are important to the people of Alaska that we can agree on, and we should agree on, and we should be able to move forward.
I think we did some good meetings on energy, and we talked about the gas line. We talked about stuff beforehand together as freshmen in a way that I think has definitely influenced the way I look at it now. And also we did AI. We did things that, I don't know, I think we did good stuff. But hey,
yeah, AI was really coming on board when we were freshmen. There was things happening with that.
Jesse Sumner was spearheading that. He's still spearheading that. He's still sending me texts saying, like, when is judiciary going to do hearings on AI? If you're listening, Jesse Sumner, we'll do that.
I love Jesse Sumner. He was a great guy. I really appreciated working with him. He brought unique perspectives, and he was just so level-headed. And yeah, it was good. I miss him being here for sure.
Last thing I'll just close off with. You sit next to me on the floor. We have new seating assignments. It's like being in school. People you sat with.
Assigned seats.
Last grade. Now you have new people that you sit with.
Yeah.
And we were sitting together at State of the State, and when Governor Dunleavy thanked President Trump, you gave a very vigorous, instantaneous standing ovation, which as your seatmate, I noticed. So
I may have been the only one to stand. I was curious about that. Governor Dunleavy had just spoken about many of the really positive executive orders that Trump has issued in regards to energy, in regards to so many of the issues that are really important to Alaska. And I was so thankful to read those executive orders. I'm going, this is amazing. This is really going to open up Alaska to our potential, right? Because honestly, we're struggling. We're struggling as a state. We have deficits in our budgets now. We have inadequate funding in many different areas. And to get that, to see those executive orders targeted to Alaska, because we were brutalized during the Biden administration on different shutting this down, shutting that down. And now it's opened up and making it more available for Alaska to actually utilize its resource potential.
This is the perfect example where we can absolutely agree and have completely different perspectives. I agree that we have major shortfalls in our budget and we need additional investment. But my context on that day was that there had been this funding freeze, and Alaska, being the state that gets the most federal money per capita of any other state in the country, was potentially the most adversely affected by the funding freeze. For me, in the context of knowing that we are really lacking in some investment, and then to see all that money frozen and the potential chaos that could ensue, I did not stand up.
Yeah, so we had two different trains of thought on that particular comment. So, but I think it's good for any executive to come in and say, where is this money going and what is it being used for? Because they're already finding targeted money that was going to just these crazy different things, and to pull that money back from things we really shouldn't be spending them on, I think is a good thing. He has a fiduciary responsibility to the United States to not just be wasting taxpayers' money or not be printing taxpayer money and creating inflation for all of us. We felt that for the last 4 years, and I'm hoping that turns around because inflation is killing and hurting a lot of people.
We'll see. Thanks so much for being on the podcast, Frank Tomaszewski. I usually ask people at the end if there's, because we are of our name, the East Anchorage Book Club, but I'll ask people if they want to recommend a book.
Sure. And I just want to thank you, Andrew. I think you are a great colleague to work with. I think you have a good way of thinking about things. You're a reasonable and intelligent person, and I appreciate working with you. If I wanted to recommend a book, one of the books that I read when I was very young was called The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's about finances. And it's a short book. It's an easy read. It's story-led. And it's just a way that one can start building wealth for themselves. And so it's The Richest Man in Babylon. Whenever there's a marriage or anything, one of the gifts I give them to somebody is that book because they're young. And I've given it to many high school students who are graduate. They read this book. I wish I would have read it when I was 19 and implemented it. And it's a great way to just use your own income to start generating wealth for yourself. And so you're not finding yourself broke at 60.
I hear you. Thank you so much, Frank Tomaszewski.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Andrew.
The author of the book, The Richest Man in Babylon, is George Clayson. Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@aklec.gov or call 907-465-4940.